outside anyways. But that's how you press the pin out. So basically you're driving this all the way through, and the rod kind of comes up against the side of the piston, and you keep pressing and it just pushes all the way out, and then it'll get through here, and everything gets slack on it, pressure comes off of it, the rod falls down, it falls down here, and this will fall down into underneath under the plate, which you'll see in the video because I'll reach in and fish everything out. And then to get them back on, engine shops have a rod heater where they stick these rods into a heater. Sometimes they're electric, sometimes they're gas of some sort. I'm actually going to heat these up and do this myself. I'm going to just use a propane torch. Get them a light glowing red, not a bright cherry red, just a dark amber glowing red. And when they're glowing red, you drop them in here. Whoops. Drop them in here, and you press the pin through while the rod is warm, and then let it cool naturally, and the rod will be pressed onto the pin inside the piston, and the pin will the rod and the pin will slide in the piston somewhat side to side, so there doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to at least want to attempt to get them flush as possible. So on a new piston, you can see how well they slide on a brand new piston that they haven't been heat cycled multiple times, and oil hasn't built up a film or anything like that. Plus, I'm sure these are probably damaged from being pressed out. Though I've read and I've heard people say, oh yeah, I could press them out, and if they make a mistake, and flip them around and whatnot, and heat the rod back up and press them back in. So when you are assembling, you got to look at the tops of the pistons. This one here has a notch, and you can also see how this is a flatter top with valve relief cut out. Where the older one, we'll flip them around so they both have the arrows point in the same direction. This one here has an arrow. This has what they call the deep bathtub. There's at least two versions of these bathtub pistons. There's this one here, which is like crazy .220 or something like that, deep or recess. And then there's a one that's not as deep. It's a little shallower, and I think it's like 1.5 or 1.7 or something like that. These also have the valve relief cutouts. But when you go to press or install the rods or hang the pistons on the rods, you want to make sure you have the orientation correct, so know where that arrow is. What I'll do, and you'll see this in probably part 3, I got like my little orange paint marker. I look at that, and then I go ahead and orange dot it. Nothing, it's a water-based neon color marker, kind of it'll wash off in the oil, and it'll disappear by probably the second oil change. The other thing to watch for when assembling is on the rods. You'll see that this has a taper. So one side of the rod has a taper, and the other side of the rod doesn't have a taper. It's completely flat faced. It looks like there's a step in here because I have the bearings in here, and I guess I could take them out really quick. These are your replacement standard Clevelite 77 bearings, name brand. be our standard size. I'll wipe them off and show those to you here in a second. So during disassembly of the engine, before you take the rods and pistons out of the engine block, you either want to mark the rods. A lot of people will either mark them up here on the flat, or they'll Sharpie a number on them, paint a number on them. Ford has a tendency to mark their rods. So I don't know if the camera's able to pick that up or not, but there is a number 4 stamped there. And I put the cap on backwards apparently, because the 4 on the cap is on the opposite side. So I gotta flip that around. So I didn't number these rods and what came from where, because these were already numbered and they were actually in the correct locations. So therefore I'm like, okay, Ford has the the last person that was in this engine didn't have a bunch of rods sitting on a shelf that were already reconditioned and resized and throw in a bunch of 6s or 3s. I actually have an engine in one of these totes over here that has a cheap, quick reman job, engine shop job, where they just grab 8 rods out of a pile of rods and throw them in an engine. So you'll have number stamps, so there'll be like, I think I have 2 2s and 3 5s or something crazy in that one. And that one was one that I actually numbered when I went through and wrote the number up here on top, because I had multiples of the same number. But now that the bearings are out, maybe you'll be able to see the bevel a little bit better. So this is the bevel side. Yep, I'm in the shadow. So you got a little bit of a bevel on this side here, and then it tapers down. On the back side, it's completely flat, no bevel. So nice 90-degree sharp edge. So when I took this apart, before I disassembled this, I actually did a little bit of research on rebuilding a 460, because this is my first 460 block, and saw people talk about this. So when I pulled the number 1 cylinder out, I pulled the piston and rod out and saw how it came out, kept that orientation correct, set it on the bench, looked for the bevel. I'm like, oh yeah, there's the bevel. So the easiest way to remember, we'll walk around the other side. Passenger side is 1, 2, 3, 4. Driver side 5, 6, 7, 8 on a Ford. No odds, evens, no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or anything like that. It's 1 through 4, 5 through 8. The arrow on the pistons, or the notches, point forward. So on this side, you're going to want the piston notch here, and you're going to want the piston notch here. What is interesting, though, is when it comes to the bevel on the rod, the bevel faces the side of the journals on the crank. So this bevel would face the front on this side, because you got this rod here comes down and is on the leading edge of a shared journal on a crankshaft. On the opposite side of the motor, as we walk around, arrow points forward on the piston, bevel on the rod faces the rear. So things to watch for. So we'll come back to the bearings. come off. Here's your Cleve Light 77 number. I don't know if it's visible or not. So I'm gonna be the first to tell you, if you're gonna go out and buy a camera, GoPros are nice, they're inexpensive. That's what I use to film this. The video finder on the back of the camera, well, decent size and seems to be normal industry standards. And when I'm looking through it as I'm filming, something I'm not very good at doing yet, because you'll see my point of view sometimes is way off in left field, where because I'm not paying attention to the screen. The numbers and stuff like this is kind of hard to pick the detail up, and the zoom on it is basically a 2x zoom, and it's not something I could just hit a button and change and zoom in and zoom out on a button on the camera. I gotta go through the touch screen on the back, which means fumbling while you're trying to record. Little disappointing on that, but not horrible. What you have on this side here is CB for crank or connecting rod bearing. 818 is your part number. P is their line. There's a P and A. I think this is their triple tri-metal bearing. The A is their aluminum version. And then what's up here above it, I believe, is a date. So this looks like a 280, which is would be February of 1980. When I was looking at the pistons, I mentioned it earlier that there's the part number 418P on here, which is a standard piston type of thing. And it may actually even be a Silverlight piston, because that's what this piston is over here. And it has the same markings. So it has the circle with the dots all the way around it, the part number in it, but there's a number above the part number. I don't know if the camera's picking it up or not, but that's a 79. When I was looking at these, my new pistons, I have HC1191, which is the part number. And underneath the part number is a 22, which leads me to believe that's a year. So I know the rod bearings have a 1980 date on them. The main bearing, when I took the one cap off and looked at it, which I'll do in the next, it'll probably be in episode 3, is some of the crank being pulled. I'll film the crankshaft being pulled out of that, and I'll explain measuring clearances using plastigage. I have brand new standard bearings, because these are standard. There's no markings on them. When they're an overbore, under the part number, there'll be like a point, or there'll be a 001 for a 1,000ths oversized, or there'll be a 010 for a 10,000 oversized, and a 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. This has no numbers under it, so this will lead me to believe this is your standard size bearing. So I went ahead and ordered standard size bearings. And then I have plastigage. I have red and green. It's like $2 a strip from your local O'Reilly's. And when a dry bearing and everything cleaned and everything, you quick assemble. You put the strip of plastigage across the bearing. You torque it down to specs. You don't turn the crank or anything. You just torque it down to specs. And then you remove it, and you measure how flat. So the little itty bitty pencil width strip of plastigage gets squished, and you measured the width. The wider, the tighter the clearance is, the narrower, the bigger the gap. And if it's not within specs or usable specs, then you got to start looking into oversize. If you're lucky and you got to go oversize, you could go with a .001 clearance. Otherwise, you got to send off the, if it's, and the 001 doesn't work, then you got to go take your crankshaft to a machine shop, have it turned, where they'll turn it to 10 over, and you just order 10 over bearings. So that is a quick overview. Flat top pistons, hoping to bump the compression a little bit. When it comes to pistons, there is what they call compression height. Top of the piston to the center of the bore on the pin is your compression height. Most of the factory, or most of the off-the-shelf replacement pistons that you can order now are a little bit shorter compression height. So the piston goes down in the cylinder hole just a hair, which is unfortunate. They're supposedly the early 90s fuel injected pistons have the taller compression height. Problem is they have the small bathtub recessed piston head, so it's, you get the higher, which helps the quench area, which is the area between the top of the piston and the bottom of the cylinder head, including the thickness of the gasket and anything in here. Quench area helps with detonation and everything, but when you start getting all these big huge dishes in them, you start losing compression ratio. This was a 70s motor, big bathtub pistons, and I'm gonna guess, so they were shooting for 8.5 to 1 compression. Whether that's actually what they obtained or not is hard to say. Where the older, late 60s, 60, I think 8, 9, 70, 71 maybe? Well, yeah, 71, because that 429 is a 71. Had pistons that looked like this, and they were supposed to be like anywhere from 10.5 to 11.5 compression. Well, I'm not shooting for that high. I mean, it's a truck. I want a little bit better than 8.5. I'm kind of hoping, if I did my math correctly, I think I'm like 9.6, 9.7, something, depending on if you want, how you want to round it, which should be a little bit of a increase in bump. So this is a budget build. I'm going to do most of the stuff myself. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I honed the cylinders myself. This was just a quick hone to kind of clean and smooth a little bit out for my measuring, which I discussed earlier. And we come through and do a finish hone on them. A honing's not going to take a great huge amount of material off, so my measurements aren't going to be changing a whole lot. I also like to run a wheel cylinder hone through the lifter bores just to remove any potential sharp edges and any kind of a film, glaze, or whatever that can't be removed from your simple cleaning. That way I clean, make sure there's nothing to prevent the lifter from spinning. And because a lifter, flat tappet lifter rotates as it goes up and down on the cam. And there's been a big huge issue on lifter failures and bad camshafts and a combination of metal, poor metal. They like to blame it on China, though most of your camshafts are actually still cast and cored in the... Alright, now no idea why the camera decided to shut off, but it shut off. So, back again. On the topic of camshafts, lifter, bad metal and lifters, Chinese lifters, though I will admit there is a bunch of lifters that are being made overseas. Softer metal, improper metals. It's really a combination of things. Highly inspect your parts if you're going to go with a flat tappet, non-roller camshaft. Inspect your parts. Does the camshaft have taper? Their lobes on the camshaft are tapered, and then there's a crown on the top of the lifter, and they work together. This is where I recommend buying cam and lifters from the same company. Buy the cam and lifter kit. Don't mix match. Because they should have crowns that match the taper on their lifters, and the taper on the cam, I said that wrong. Taper on the cam and the crown need to match, and that's what causes the cam or the lifter to rotate as it goes up and down. I've had good luck with a few manufacturers. I'm not going to name names. This time I went and tried something different. I actually contacted Oregon. Alright. For whatever reason, the camera likes to stop recording. Great. I think my shop is cursed. As I was saying, Oregon Cams, called them up. They make grind cams. They can make you new ones. They sell lifters. The lifters that they do sell are Johnson High Lift. Johnson High Lift is a high quality lifter. I've heard rumors, I don't know if it's true or not, but the rumors that they are now being sourced overseas as well. But Oregon Cams will also regrind your cam and reface your lifters if you send it to them, and they check them and inspect them, see if they're good, and if they're good, they ship you pay for it and they ship everything back. And that's actually what I chose to do. So I have Oregon Cams. I took the cam out of this. Didn't see any Ford numbers on it, so I have no idea what that camshaft was. I took the lifters out of this and I boxed it all up. I think from where I am in Eastern Washington to Vancouver, Washington was 2 days shipping, and it cost me like $22, if I remember correctly. They reground the cam, refaced my lifters. They put a hardened finish, melanized finish on the camshaft, boxed it back up, called me, told me it's ready. I paid them, and they shipped them back. I think I had it back within 3 weeks, but I also had Christmas and New Year's holidays in that 3-week period. So, seems fairly quick to me. The products that came out of the box looks good. You guys will see that in a future video. Maybe end of episode 3, maybe episode 4. Don't know. Kind of do these in shorter 20-minute, 25-minute videos is what I'm kind of hoping to do. And so I still have a little bit of disassembly to show you. Pull the crank out, clean it up, run cleaner through all the oil passages in it. I want to do some more block cleaning once the crank is out of it. Obviously I got to finish painting, but this was just a rough coat. And then I got to go through the cylinder heads. I'm going to use the police interceptor heads, which were the D2OE, if I remember right. Those, the ones with screw-in studs and guide plates, those are the police interceptor heads. They're the closed chamber heads. Those are the heads I'm going to use. And I'm actually going to attempt... Whoops. I'm actually going to attempt to pull the valves myself. There's the keepers. And spring cup. I think there's another term for that as well. These are the keepers or the retainer. Valve stem seal, just a regular umbrella style. I pulled one exhaust valve out. Gonna hit it with a brass wheel, clean the carbon off of it. Face I'm not overly concerned about, but just clean the backside down here. Don't want to get into where the seal and the guide ride, but down here below, you could clean that carbon up and remove that carbon. And then I might hit the face. I don't have a grinder. There's a machine that you can put these on. It has angles on it. It has a grinding stone that grinds the valve faces on them. I don't have that equipment. But I picked up a valve spring compressor for $14 at a antique store of all places. Ordered replacement jaws, the one because I needed something that curved, allow more clamping. Just used it on one valve just to see if I try to figure out how to do it. It's been years since I've done it, and I think the one time I did it, it was in a automotive shop at school, and it was pneumatic. And I can see pneumatic being a much nicer way to do this. I'm going to try to pull the valves myself. I'm looking into getting like knee-way valve seat cutters. Not exactly cheap, but I figured it's a budget build. I want to try to do this myself, as much of it I can myself. I may be doing it twice. Who knows? But budget build. I have everything to do the internals of this engine. Pistons, which I could have just reused those if I didn't care about low compression. Pistons, rings, bearings, timing set, gasket set, freeze plugs, camshaft and lifters. I'm 750 bucks into it, and then you have a couple cans of spray paint. I think they ended up being about $8 a can. I bought 4 of them. No, they weren't that expensive because I know I didn't spend 32 bucks. About 8 cans of paint because, well, it was a British racing green is what was the color we chose. Hard to find locally, so I found them online. It was way less than $12, $13 a can that the stores want here for the exact same brand. So I ordered 4 of them because not knowing, sometimes the coverage isn't very good. This green is actually covers really well. So I'm thinking 30 bucks or something like that into 4 cans of paint. I'm into $5-6 bucks, I think, in plastigage from O'Reilly's. I think I picked up more anti-seize, more engine assembly lube. Fogging oil is what I've been using for when I hone the cylinders. And you can use motor oil. Some guys use kerosene, diesel fuel. Basically, this is what I'm using for hone. It's just your typical 3-stone, spring-loaded. I believe, if I remember correctly, these are the medium stones. There are some companies actually list the grit, and then some companies just go coarse, medium, and fine. I have the medium, and I have the fine. I'm going to go a couple more passes with the medium stones, and then I'll swap these out to the fine stone, and then do a quick final hone with the quick, or final hone with the fine stones. Just maybe one quick pass, or maybe two. Attaches to a drill, spring loaded, tension's a little bit adjustable with the thumb wheel, so you could put more or less tension on the arms. You compress it, stick it the hone in the cylinders, drill, spray the walls with some lube, whether it be oil, kerosene, diesel, WD-40, whatever. I used fogging oil because I had a can of it and I don't really fog a whole lot of anything anymore. That's kind of a boat thing. Which you guys will be seeing some Will It Run on a boat. Picked that up last summer. But you put this in the drill, chuck it up, oil it, and then just up and down while the drill spins it. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And it'll basically kind of like sandpaper. Takes the glaze, levels out the ridges in the finish of the cylinder walls. I'm just running cast iron piston rings, so I don't need the super high-end finish that you get with some of the other hones and some of the other stones and machine shop for like molly rings and stuff like that. Plan is just a simple budget build, mild RV cam, a little bit of a bump and compression on the with the pistons. I ordered carburetor and an air cleaner the other day. They should be here end of next week. Gotta find some cool valve covers, but in the meantime I'll just clean up some of the original tins. As much as I'd love to run an aluminum intake manifold, I'll probably run one of these intakes. I gotta do a little research on that and which one I want to use. Probably, oh shoot, without looking at them, looking at the numbers, I don't remember. I think it's that one is the one I was planning on using, if I remember correctly. Well, that's going to be it for this episode. If you liked it, please click subscribe and like and all that jazz. If you don't like it, tell me you didn't like it. Tell me what I need to do better. I know I've been working on lighting. My point of view while holding a camera in one hand and trying to work in the other hasn't always been the greatest. Something I need to work on. You guys get to watch that are watching this or are going to follow along. Get to help me figure out and watch me learn how to manipulate camera, editing software, talk a little more, talk a little less, blow up a motor because I don't know what I'm doing. No, I have a slight idea. I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I know you can spend big money and build it 100% correctly. And you can also do these backyard garage build, kind of like what I'm doing, on a budget, and have decent success with it. I got the 66 F100 was similar to this. Clean motor, measured everything like I did here. Measured crank and rod bearings like I'm going to do here, and you'll get to see it. Assembled it, And here I am. It's been running for 2 years. Seems to be a good motor. Need to work on some carb tuning, but that's a whole nother set of videos. And my hearing isn't the greatest anymore, so mild pinging and what detonation and stuff like that are not always easiest for me to pick up on. 302 in that in the Mustang, which you guys will get some videos of at some point. I haven't really talked about it a whole lot, but here you are. It's kind of scary. The Mustang's right there. The other bay is full of Mustang parts. I ordered a fiberglass hood for it. When I ordered it, they failed to tell me it was going to take 6 months or whatever to get, which kind of threw a monkey wrench in my bodywork plans. This engine is an engine I've been packing around for 5 years, 6 years. It's gone through. It's an 87 302 with 70 351 Windsor heads on it. E303 roller cam. 625 Street Demon carburetor. I had an issue with clutch cable conversion and tri-Y headers. They try to occupy the same space, and I wasn't going backwards from the clutch cable, and I didn't want to try to figure out hydraulics. So headers went bye-bye, and I'll have to order another set. But plans are to have this running soon. It's missing a few things, but guys will be seeing more and more of this, or seeing some of this, and you'll probably see a little bit of my 66 F100 video as well. So hopefully you liked this episode, and you'll continue to watch for the continuation of this series, and then I'll be bringing you in another project. Bringing you in on some of these other projects that I have. So, alright, for whatever reason,